Hello, and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I am Laurissa Krishock with OneTrust, coming to you from Cincinnati, Ohio. Today, I have the pleasure of talking to Sanjay Saxena at Bread Financial. How does your role interact with privacy and InfoSec, the one that you're currently in? Like historically in organizations, these have been really siloed teams. How have you brought your team together and done that at Bread?
Oh yeah, so this is one area which I'm very passionate about in my current position, in my current role, and even in the work, for example, I did at Northern Trust. This was quite a area of challenge across the board, and you are aware uh, that traditionally these roles are siloed. Some are in business, like for example, the privacy may report into the chief administrative officer, and the infosec goes into the CIO of the organization. So the way these roles are built, they are siloed, right? And increasingly, the external stakeholders, whether it is the regulators, and also the internal stakeholders, the senior leadership, they want consistent solutions across the board, right? So, in my current role, which is the head of data protection, governance, and management, a rather lengthy title, but it kind of illustrates the role, what I am expected to do, and some of the challenges. So, each of these silos has its own policies and standards and their own framework for solving different aspects or different dimensions of the problem. So let's take data protection as an example. It is entirely possible that information security may have a solution. Um, and now I'm not relating to my organization, but in general, I'm talking about what's broadly what I've seen in the industry. So the idea is to kind of bring all of these groups together in a common forum to solve those problems holistically across the board. So there are different aspects of those problems. Some of them belong to core data management, but broadly speaking, there needs to be a common strategy that needs to be built across some of these areas. Let's take the example of PII data, right, and confidential data. Now we've done a lot of work in Bread Financial to protect our data and our customers, and I'm really proud of the work that me and my counterparts have done. But so when you look at not but when you look at what all needs to be done, uh, you need to have access controls on your PII data. You need to know where the data exists, so you need to catalog it effectively. You also need to make sure that appropriate policies from a privacy perspective are attached to those data elements or that data. So that is what I mean by a comprehensive approach. You need to understand all those aspects and put in place the right processes, the right controls across three disciplines, right? And that does require that level of collaboration, which we
Yeah,
have today at Bread Financial.
yeah. Thank you for sharing that about your role and what Bread's up to as well. Um, the next couple things that I'd love to talk to you about are really hot topics out in the market. We've been to IAPP, we had Trust Week, different things that I'm going to, and all the presentations, and I'm sure it's the same for you, is really about AI, how that is affecting organizations. So how do you start to manage this machine learning, AI tools and apps that are out there used within your organization? Like, how are you approaching that maybe at Bread or what you're seeing, out in other organizations?
Yeah. So at Bread, we are using these technologies or these new areas very extensively in different aspects of our business. The main area typically when a company or a business is looking at AI or looking at machine learning, and I'm now talking from a governance perspective, is how can we explain what we are building, how can we make sure that the quality of information going into the models is accurate and is free from bias, for example. uh, and then the third thing is, uh, making sure that there is a refresh of these things, that there is a whole pipeline, an operational pipeline of deploying these models into production and using them effectively, right? So those are some of the typical challenges. And I'm not talking about the large language models and the chat GPT kind of use cases. That opens up another frontier in my mind. But when you can consider the traditional machine learning and AI, those are some of the considerations that you have to bring. And then again, that requires a lot of cross collaboration between the different teams,
Yeah.
between governance and analytics and AI teams, to make sure that the end product is good.
In our experience, we're seeing a lot of enterprise and strategic accounts. They have a blanket policy of no AI, like no AI being used in the environment. And I think that we would all agree that it's going to be helpful, and businesses that are going to flourish are going to need to be able to utilize the tools. So what would you suggest as a starting place for these organizations? Because we're seeing it a lot, even in very large organizations where they're like, you know what, right now we just have a no AI policy. Now, they don't have a way to police it or any of that, but that's their policy today.
And I think that may work. That may work for a few, for a year or two, but then eventually the organizations have to look at this very carefully, because there are others that are moving forward, and they are deploying AI models. They are deploying use cases using AI, which are of benefit to them, and that will help them leapfrog as they go. So in the short term, it is understood if companies want to be cautious about the security aspects, about the things that I just talked about, making sure we have accurate data going into the models, making sure that the model is explainable, there is no bias, etc. So all those are essential disciplines and foundations that have to be set up. So, and if those are not set up, then I do agree that you have to tread carefully. But the way forward is not to say no to AI, but to develop those capabilities within the organization and then launch into a proper AI program. And hypothetically, right, we may start with internal use cases, right, to improve our productivity or to do other things that for example, that help us annotate things, right, and summarize things, or whatever those could be. They could be customer calls, they could be other things, etc., but they are meant for internal productivity. Now those typically are use cases that are much more safer to implement, perhaps, if I can use that word, versus anything that impacts your customer, right?
Mhm.
So I would say that I think take that approach of maturing your foundational capabilities, making sure, again, what you asked earlier, that your information security groups, your data governance and management teams, uh, if you have a model management or a model governance team, that they are also fully engaged in building the right foundation. And as long as you have that and you have all the safeguards, then I think AI can be a very powerful thing.
Great. And I appreciate that, because I think a lot of people are just really not sure about it. And there was just that latest AI out of the EU, the new AI kind of news came out this last week, and their framework and what they're doing with it. So stuff is coming. It'll take time to get here, but I think everything you've shared is great wisdom and advice. Is there anything I didn't ask that you've experiencing, anything that you might want to share with the few minutes we have left? Any
I
thought?
would say that I think you've covered a lot of important aspects of what a good data management program should look like in organizations. Um, what I would say further is that when you look at data management or data governance and other aspects, analytics, etc., overall, and this is no surprise, right, that there would be an explosion in terms of the amount of data we are using internally and externally.
Yeah.
Uh, Firms will have to figure out how to share data with their partners, in a secure fashion, right?
Mhm.
Uh, the concept of clean rooms is going to come in a much more in a bigger way, um, along with the core concepts of governance and data management and the basic foundation around quality, metadata management, etc. So what we are seeing today is just the starting point. You asked about the evolution of the role. I think in many ways you can say that the role starts from here and goes in a new direction as we move forward. And all these are new and exciting things, and I'm frankly very excited to be part of this area and be able to play a role in this in data going forward.
Yeah, and I know that we're our time is coming to a close. You know, I'm thankful so much, Sanjay, for the time that you spent. You know, time is a commodity, and I know that you're very busy. So thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. And please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. There's another good one that Sanjay has. And again, remember that cdomagazine.tech, TECH, to see those other additional interviews. And again, thank you.
Thank you, and a very happy new year.